Hey there. Thanks for tuning in to our panel discussion on Gen AI assistants and agents that deliver on the hype. Brought to you by ETCIO in association with IBM. I'm Soumik Ghosh, Senior Assistant Editor at ETCIO, and I'm thrilled to moderate our discussion today. Now, generative AI has moved from experimentation to execution at breakneck speeds. Gartner predicts that by 2026, over 80% of enterprises will have used GenAI APIs or deployed GenAI-enabled applications in production. Now, mind you, this number was less than 5% just 3 years back. Yet the question remains, can AI assistants and GenAI agents truly deliver beyond the hype? Today, we talk to top leaders from the BFSI, manufacturing, and IT consulting space to explore how enterprises are separating promise from reality and what it takes to unlock the real business value from GenAI. And to do that, let me welcome our panelists for the day. We've got Rohit Kilam. He's the CTO at HDFC Life Insurance. Rohit, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me here.
All right. Up next, we've got Sivakumar Nandipati. He's the CDO at Fedfina. Thanks again, Shiva, for joining us.
Pleasure is mine as well. Thank you.
Up next, Vardhan. He's the global head at Apollo Tyres. Vardhan, good afternoon and thank you for joining us.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me here, and it's a pleasure to really be along with all such an esteemed panel.
Absolutely. And of course, our man from IBM, Shamindra Basu. He's the partner consulting at IBM. Shamindra, thank you for joining us and being a part of this panel.
Thank you. A pleasure to be here.
All right. Now, the first question goes out to all the IT leaders here. And this is on a recent IBM study that shows that 51% of Indian enterprises at this point of time have adopted GenAI in some form or the other. However, the question still remains about ROI. So I'm going to be starting with you, Rohit. Rohit, if you can tell me a little bit about how do you separate the chaff from the grain when it comes to GenAI, or as you like to call it, flying paper planes?
It's extremely important to look at the use cases and where you are deploying your technology to get the maximum bang for the buck. And if you have to get maximum bang for the buck, you have to take use cases for GenAI which are more workflow intensive, which are very focused on delivering value. That means they should be able to scale enterprise wide. They should not be micro productivity oriented, right? Just a 5% or a single digit increase in productivity is of no use for deploying a technology like GenAI. And finally, also looking at use cases where we can actually make a customer impact at the end of the day, specifically in terms of risk and fraud. Those are the cases which are extremely important for us to go ahead for. That means, for example, I'll give you an example. You may have call center agents which are automated with GenAI for call centers where they are just reading out the scripts, right? That $8 per head kind of a scenario. But where you need complex, thinking, you need more analysis, and you need to be much more intuitive and empathetic. That's where the human cannot be replaced. So that's the difference between the scalability and the balance between the GenAI as well as human beings. Yeah.
Thanks so much for that. Now let's hear from Fedfina. Now, Shiva, if you can tell us about your perception of GenAI and also what do you think are some of the real world use cases that can actually deliver business impact as opposed to ones that are still kind of a pipe dream at this point?
GenAI, as all of you know, it's a disruption, but every disruption sounds like a problem until and unless you rephrase it properly, it becomes a possibility. Having said that, I would have an interesting perspective measuring GenAI use cases. Let's come back to a human stuff. As all of us being humans, we fundamentally value three important principles, right? Time, money, and energy. Like we all know that in the initial phases of life, we have time and energy, we don't have money. Later phase of life, we have money and energy, we don't have time. And in the last phase of life, we have time. So we have time and money, we don't have energy. I would exactly correlate these GenAI use cases to the same thing. time remains same, money remains same. Instead of energy, I'll just replace energy with the risk.
Right.
From the other tangent of the energy, to be put precisely. So with this, what I would wanted to say is any GenAI use case would be successful if it is working for any of these three parameters in the company. For time, being for a quick tat, or money if it is doing a cost savings, or even the risk if it is going to mitigate risk for the NBFC institutions like us. Having said that, my fellow mate Rohit, as he pointed three use cases, I would again touch upon the customer servicing use case, which is actually working for the banks or NBFCs. There is some kind of improvement on the loan and credit underwriting use cases as well. It is reducing the time, getting the gist and jump summary which needs to be taken decision quickly, and then the fraudulent, the less false positives which were happening. And one more bit of point which I could add was these developers AI tools which were making the TAT little quicker with GenAI kind of tools with co-pilots which are being coming into market. And with that, that is the measure. The hype which we can see generally is there are some of the things, but what I would say again, AI washable reports, like I washable reports. AI as I is synonym I'm using. Some of the reports which were they're calling it as the dashboards, but more or less they are the reports which were there in the precision and too much polished use cases of the chatbots which doesn't have a direct method to KPI is what the hype I would feel.
Understood. Thanks so much for Shiva, for that, Shiva. You kind of took me back with Fleming's, electric and magnetic currents. So, Harsh, if you can tell us, how do you see this at Apollo Tyres? What are some of the AI use cases, GenAI use cases that you think can deliver ROI versus the ones which are still a little bit under the hype cycle?
So, Soumik, for me, it's pretty clear. I mean, I don't really kind of go into the AI cases. For us, it's IA, which is intelligent automation, right? So, anything which we do it in the manufacturing, we call it as an intelligent automation use case. And that's something to me is a function of 5 elements. One, that, okay, have you really kind of figured out the right business reason and the purpose for it, for any particular initiative? The second element of the function is, do you have the right cross-functional team, the cultural sensitivity, whether it's top down or the bottom up, do you have really got the right cross-functional team for that particular initiative or not? Then the third one, which I typically emphasize on, being from the manufacturing, that what we do, looking for any intelligent automation initiative, we look for the metrics. What is the current metrics, what is the baseline metrics, what's the target metrics, so that you can really figure it out. What sort of headroom do you have to really get that intelligent automation really working, right? I'm still not talking about AI, I'm talking about intelligent automation, right? And then you have certainly the technology. Technology is always evolving at the breakneck speed. There's a lot of technology, we keep trying a lot of things. GenAI is one of them, multi-agentic AI system, agentic mesh, quantum-inspired machine learning is all a lot of things that, okay, we are trying it in our Industry 4.0 operated manufacturing. And the fifth element is certainly ROI. To me, it's very clear that if you're using AI or any sort of technology on the top of, certainly the base is cloud, data and IoT, it has to be at speed, at scale, at ROI. Now, if I really kind of put it into the generative AI, so we have really been able to really kind of successfully try, and not only try, now we have been able to scale up, scale out, and in manufacturing, we call it Yoko 10, which is horizontal deployment, right? So we have been able to really kind of horizontally deploy manufacturing reasoner, a reasoner which is just not a chatbot, which can connect to the IIoT data coming from the PLCs, machines, SCADA, HMIs, and then can allow our plant engineers to tag back to those machine data and ask that, okay, where exactly the efficiency bottleneck is. And we are using it for improvising cycle time. And that's the project which I see that it is scaling up across, started off from our Chennai plant, now scaled out to our Jonjo's Hungary plant, in our Gujarat plant, in our AP plant, and scaling it out like this itself. So to me, it's always like this, that have you started with the right business purpose or not? Could you really kind of find out the right target metrics? Because that gives you the headroom to try, right? All the financial reasons. And then suddenly the cross-functional team, cultural sensitivity, technologies, you can always apply any technology. Today, we are trying in supply chain agentic mesh, okay? And again, it's As of now, it's strategy on a paper, but in manufacturing, we are enjoying quite a lot of those successful horizontally deployed agentic itself and all that. So I see the right business purpose. It has not to be driven by the AI. It has not to be driven by the technology. It has to be driven by the business guys itself, thinking about okay, what they have a problem without worrying about whether it is a hardware problem or a software problem. They just need to really kind of do the design thinking on their problem. You'll certainly find Gen AI or AI really playing a role of a salt to really kind of accelerate that. So that's the way I see it.
All right. I think, Harsh, you covered a lot of ground there, and it's pretty impressive the way Apollo Tyres has been looking at GenAI. So thanks for sharing that again. All right. I'll get back to you, Rohit. Now, Rohit, even in the BFSI space, we have seen a lot of adoption, especially when it comes to fraud detection or loan disbursement. Especially with HDFC Life Insurance, what are some of the GenAI use cases, or what change do you think can GenAI powered assistance bring? Are there some low hanging fruits that you've already identified?
So we have multiple use cases which are in production, and the use cases exist across the customer life cycle, starting from pre-customer onboarding to customer onboarding to underwriting, fraud and risk management, and claims management, servicing, complete customer life cycle. We have deployed multiple use cases on this. It was a very simple Gen AI use case. You go to a customer agent, and he takes your personal details and gives you an infographic, which can be video or it can be audio plus visual, where you can get your personalized proposal form, right? So it gives that kind of a personal touch. So hyper personalization is driven through that. And there are multiple use cases like that. We've got agents which we are building onto for helping the field staff in sales from that standpoint. So there are multiple. We want to focus on areas which are workforce centric, which are dense on the workflow, because that's where the bang for the buck is. One, you want to focus on areas where the risk and underwriting is. That is extremely important, and we've seen some growth there. We are also looking at multiple use cases where we can look at journeys which we are trying to POC, customer journeys on agentic platform. That's the POCs that we would be running now.
Okay, thanks for sharing that. Now, Shiva, in his previous answer, he did specify that the last thing the BFSI industry wants is a glorified chatbot. So, Shiva, tell us the story at Fedfina. How are you looking at GenAI, specifically with respect to some of the use cases?
So earlier, all of us were on the rule-based chatbots, and now the GenAI agents had come. Only way I would try to differentiate them is rule-based chatbots is where we are doing a lot of coding for the machines, and GenAI agents is where we are decoding the human intentions to get it as an answers. Now, with that as a picture, the most important things which GenAI things has picked up over this traditional approach is more or less understanding the unstructured data, be it the audio files, images, or even the conversations which were happening between the prospect and a sales manager, trying to get the information out of it, being it automatically the form getting filled. The automation till that level is up and active. And second important thing which we have even done pilot testing in our Kaita company as well is of the employee bot which we have done, so that it has a refinery of the information. It's more like a chat GPT for the Fedfina. That kind of stuff is what we have made, which we are fine tuning to make it in more of the contextual manner. What I meant was it should show the information to the person based on the role, even if the same question being asked by the different people. In fact, say suppose, again, this may come from the personalization tangent as well. The reason is there's a fraud alert. The way you will tell it to a branch manager, the way you tell it to a customer, and the way you tell it to an auditor or regulator, everything is different. So, how it works matters more. And coming to the flip side of it, while we see this, there's a human being involved. Humans are being there to see the governance and part of it, which I see more traditionally that's going to happen. The approach where it is changing is a lot of execution part of the work would be done by the machines with GenAI agents being in place, and humans would have a lot of breadth to handle it. And their role would go more of into the governance. which they will have to do. If I have to just put it as a point, this AI technology is not more about what it does. It is actually more about what it undoes. So that you would see from the negative tange of it, where what is that it's going to change apart from the direct correlation it is going to bring into the table.
Right. Thanks so much for that. And great points there. I mean, we know for a fact organizations spend a tremendous amount of time and effort when it comes to sifting through unstructured data. So thanks for sharing those points. All right. Now, Harsh, you shared a great story with us, especially when it comes to adoption of technologies such as GenAI. So tell us a little bit about your approach. Instead of a top-down, you told us about a bottom-up approach. Especially, how do you see GenAI fitting into manufacturing 4.0, and also how do you think it can deal with supply chain disruptions?
So once again, I'll reiterate, Soumik, that okay, it's not about GenAI. It's about anything which needs to be done, right? It's about intelligent automation, right? That's what IT is all about. So I see that okay, GenAI as a technology, and particularly I would say agentic AI is really at that pace and at that stage that one can leverage it for almost everything in every part of the life itself and all that, right? Coming back that okay, how we see it really getting implemented even the supply chain. First, I'll tell you the problem statement, the kind of problem statement which we are dealing with, right? And then I'll also talk about that, the areas where we are enjoying that scale up, scale out thing as well. So if you look at the problem statement for Apollo Tyres, so we have really got two global brands, Apollo and Fedfina. Fedfina, which is a 100-year-old ultra high premium tire manufacturing Dutch brand, which we acquired in 2009, 16 years of unified operation so far, right?
Wow.
If you look at the manufacturing plants, we have 7 manufacturing plants. 5 of them are in India, 2 of them are in Europe, Hungary, and then Enschede, which is Netherlands. How many tire segments do we produce? Almost everything, from passenger car to truck car to industrial vehicle tires, or whether micro mobility, speciality, 20 plus different segments. How many SKUs? 2000 plus SKUs. How many countries do we sell it? 100 plus countries do we sell it. How many supply chain hubs do we have it? 3. If I just talk about India itself, in supply chain hub, we have really got almost like 190 plus warehouses at different level, ABUs, LDCs, then RDCs and NDCs and all that. So that really gives you the sort of canvas of the problem statement which we are dealing with. So supply chain really needs a lot of those automation, and automation can come from, obviously it has to start from the data being centralized into the cloud, and obviously we leverage in our journey, we leverage S4HANA and the cloud and AI together to really kind of see that okay, how do we get to the SCM 4.0. So our what I do in my role, right? I have only a simple role to really kind of see that okay, if there is a business vision which have been really kind of casted by the chief supply chain officer, which is more to really kind of make supply chain resilient and agile from the smart supply chain, more SCM 4.0. My role is to very simply say that okay, what I can do from the technology perspective to really kind of help you achieve that objective in accelerated fashion. Obviously, AI or any other technology can only be the process, be the part of the journey, right? You need to have the process change, you need to have that culture change, you need to have that technology change. So what I'm doing it there, that I'm trying to see that okay, how exactly we bring that strategic layer of agentic AI. So it's a 3 layer of agentic AI mesh architecture which we are working on, which is strategic, transactional, and then in between you have really got tactical. So 3 layers, and then what we are trying to do that okay, with S4HANA and with all the data which we are there in the cloud, we are trying to really kind of mesh it up and see that okay, how do we really give the insight which is more customer centric. I mean, if you look at our chief supply chain officer's perspective, it's all about customer centricity. For us, we are primarily a B2B or B2B2C, more of a dealer or OEMs kind of thing. So it's for us, what is most important for the net promoter score or customer satisfaction score is OTIF. If we are able to really kind of do it on time and full, that's pretty good for us. And we are looking for somewhere around 90% plus. We are somewhere around 80% and all that. So that's the gap which I'm trying to see that okay, how exactly this AI, any form of AI. And primarily, as I said, you okay, agentic AI are really capable. they are, as Rohit also said, that you can always invest in where you have really got a workflow and multiple tasks. And how do we really kind of see that, okay, this task can really kind of talk together and get it done in an integrated fashion. That's what we are really kind of investing in. So that's an, investment which we are doing it. It's still in the early stage. Whereas in manufacturing, we have been able to really kind of make a lot of those success with, again, I repeat, because it should not be the credit to the GenAI altogether. It has to be to the data, data governance, it has to be the cloud, it has to be the IoT, and on the top of it, AI and GenAI. We have been able to really kind of use GenAI fulsome for, asset sweating, for throughput unlocking, for, quality and yield improvement. We are doing it now for the energy trading because we are very energy, intensive manufacturing company. So for energy trading and optimization, and also for the manpower productivity. So there's a lot of success which we are seeing it in the manufacturing, which was the toughest bit. I mean, typically, I would say, again, it's my humble view in my own capacity, that, everybody wants to really kind of get started with, anything which is commercial, because that's where you have really got a money quickly seeing in the bank, right? So what we decided that, okay, we'll first try to really get into the toughest bit, which is manufacturing. And if it works out there, then we'll go and then scale it out everywhere.
All right. Thanks for sharing that. Some real pearls of wisdom out there, folks. Hope you're taking notes. All right. Now, Shamindra, I'll come to you. We've heard from our IT leaders out here. Now, you've worked with a lot of verticals across the sector from different companies. So, when it comes to partnering with these companies, what are some of the patterns of use cases you've observed when it comes to GenAI adoption, especially if you're talking with respect to productivity and innovation?
Sure. And I think many of the use cases my colleagues did allude to. Let me try to bring all that together because in my role, I also have the privilege to have an inside view of what some of our top clients are doing in this space. Broadly, I see this pattern. If I were to take almost 3,000, 4,000 odd use cases we know across industries today, and it's proliferating. But if I were to really bucket them into some simple patterns, there are broadly 4 patterns that has emerged. It has also to do with the very quick evolution that has happened on the technology, and I'll come to that. The first pattern that we are seeing is what I call is user augmentation. Now, this user can be various. It can be your customer, it can be your employee, it can be your vendor. And there is a range of use cases, and these are use cases in Indian context. Many of them have already gone live in production. The basic that I hear from the executive, the CXOs that I talk about, they're actually looking for use cases, which is just, I think you alluded to, around data and how do I make intelligence out of data. I think there has been a lot of work that historically has gone there. But today, if a sales head wants to do a quick slice during his morning meeting of why my sales went down in, let's say, a Maharashtra cluster, and I have to do a quick correlation saying, what was the impact of trade promotion that happened in this cluster? Can I talk with that data in natural language and get insights? Now, this gets obviously sophisticated with use cases. Harsh talked about a manufacturing use case, and this is a ripe use case. And I don't want to overemphasize on GenAI because some of these also come real when you also create some domain fabric under it, when you talk about areas like manufacturing, in banking, because we have to all appreciate that GenAI doesn't understand these domain areas. So how are you really creating that knowledge graph underneath, which is actually leading to this? The second part that I will talk about is what Rohit initially alluded to, and this is now becoming a mainstay this year, the way I've seen it, is what I call workflow augmentation. And this is looking at not solving an individual problem, let's say an ask HR, ask sales, but looking at that entire end-to-end process. And this is moving away from a deterministic path. Most of the earlier examples were deterministic in nature. This is more in terms of goal-oriented solutions. Whether we talked about earlier in the entire loan origination, whether we talked about, and one area I'm seeing a lot of adoption is in the procurement space. So if you look at the entire procurement life cycle, starting from sourcing to the entire procurement ops to actually vendor query management, all of that today, there are people who are actually building an entire agentic framework to deal this autonomously, right? That's the second bucket. The third bucket, and this is something really picked up this year. For example, Harsh, you were talking about the supply chain area. In supply chain, the data, most of it that we have traditionally last few decades worked with is time series data. And when you talk about time series, what do you do with this time series? Because this is in the realm of our traditional AI, forecasting, ML. We are now seeing great results coming with the adoption of time series foundational models. And this is completely upending probably not the business case itself, but how we do AI and how we manage these models. Much higher forecast accuracy, much lower cost of maintenance and recreating this model. And the fourth is a bespoke, like consultants like to put everything else in miscellaneous bucket. I'll just put it in a miscellaneous bucket, which I call more of industry use cases. So many of you would have heard recently that IBM and NASA recently launched a Helios physics model for sun. And all Indians, we should be proud. The model is called actually Surya. It's open source. So these are models which are developed for a very specific area and an industry. So that for me is the fourth. And sum and substance of thousands of use cases that are proliferating, largely you will be able to bucketize under any of these four buckets. So far, what I have seen in the industry.
All right. Shamindra, I think you gave us a splendid picture of how you've seen GenAI evolve and also what IBM brings to the table. All right. Now, I'll get back to you, Rohit. Now, Rohit, you've talked about adopting GenAI use cases. How do you take a call on whether a GenAI solution or a deployment should be developed in-house, or you're going to be outsourcing it to a vendor partner? And if you are outsourcing it, what are some of the calls that CIOs must take when it comes to choosing the right partner?
I think when we're looking at a solution like GenAI, extremely important for us is to have the domain with us, to understand the domain, to understand the model should understand the domain. If it's generic, there are a lot of hallucinations in that case. So domain is the first piece that decides, should I go out or should I be in? Second part of it is proprietary data, right? If you have a large proprietary data, you would like the GenAI to use that productively, right? And to use that productively, you would rather have a large part of it. So there's no 0 and 1 situation here, right? So 100% outsource or 100%. Then we would like to use a lot of it in our using our data and how you want to create guardrails around it. And the third part of it, from ensuring that we are able to build this further on, is to ensure that you're using reusable models in your domain. It should not be like you are discovering it each time. So the reusability of the models, reusability of the architecture has to be there. Those are the three things in my mind that are important for us to look at if you want to go out or you want to do something in-house. Obviously, there is the fundamental truth of skill and talent availability in this case, but there are ways to solve it, and that's where I mean you don't have a 0 and 1 situation.
All right, thanks for that. Let's hear from the manufacturing space as well. So, Harsh, you've told us a lot about some of the use cases at Apollo Tyres. So, if you could share with our audience out here as well, what are some of the factors that leaders, digital leaders, IT leaders must look into when you're talking about developing or building a solution in-house versus if you want to partner with a company? And also, if you're partnering, what are some of the factors you look at?
So, Soumik, if I tell you candidly that, okay, we are primarily a partner-focused organization, right? What we really kind of focus on is to really kind of see that, okay, how business vision gets accelerated rather than focus on the technology. But having said that, we have built a pretty good in-house capability and capacity as well. In the case that, okay, if we see that, partners are not able to help it, we really kind of take up things and do it in-house. One of the thing which I talked about, that manufacturing reasoner, which is really kind of scaling it out, is absolutely done in-house, right? Now, having said that, I'll tell you that, okay, what are the parameters which I see particularly. So first of all, I always see that, okay, there is always an nth fraction of the problem where the focus is. So we look for the partner which can really talk about that nth fraction, not the entire bigger picture. So typically what happens, that, okay, the partners would come and start talking about the bigger picture and say that, okay, we'll transform you from A to Z. And we're like, boss, we are stuck into just this particular part. Can you help us there? So that's first thing, right? The second thing is like, we look for the patience from the partner in sense that, okay, whether it's startup or large solution provider or academia, that they should really kind of walk that mile along with us to understand our domain. Because if you really look at the manufacturing, that's where, IT, the software world, meets that, physical world every day, every hour, every minute, rather every second. So, the partner has to really kind of go through the Gemba walk, the practice, right? And should really kind of understand that, okay, what is that key pain point which we are facing it. And obviously what we do from our side is like we have really kind of lowered down the entry barrier criteria. So our NDA is very smaller. Our SOW, we have really made it very thinner. What used to be like this big now is like this 4 pages and all that, to really kind of facilitate even startups, right? But we look for that patience for the partner to really kind of come and understand our pain point, be there with us on the Gemba walk. If we are opening up our secret sauce, which is manufacturing, our plant, then they need to really kind of be patient with us to understand. Third is certainly the cost. So what I could see that in some cases, this is I'm talking about in 2024, some of the partners were, they came up and started showing prototyping pretty quick and fast, and it was pretty good. But the moment we started saying that, okay, now we are going to be really scaling it out, it started burning my pocket. And then that's where the ROI formula comes up. And we are like, boss, we are not going to go ahead with this particular project, right? Because, if I have to spend this much, there's no headroom for the ROI, right? So I would say that, okay, if that's at the start itself, if there is a business problem which is conceptualized at a global level, at a broader level rather, so at least the headroom for the experimentation is there. And if in any of the case, if the partner is really kind of not talking about how to really kind of tweak that architecture, or tweak the model, tweak the engagement, or the capex opex model to really meet that cost, then you have to really kind of take it up in-house. So my whole perspective is, first go out to the market, do the open innovation, outside in. If it's not working out, then take the control, do it in-house, and we are doing it in-house many of the cases.
All right. Well, this is turning out to be quite a masterclass of sorts. So thanks for sharing that with Harsh. Now, I come to you, Shiva. Shiva, we have seen a lot of studies. For instance, let's take one by the Harvard Business Review that actually says around 80% of AI projects, they either fail or they don't make it past the pilot stage. Now, that's the last thing you want to be happening when it comes to your GenAI deployments. From a technology standpoint, what are some of the factors that IT leaders must consider, especially when it comes to API integrations, your data pipeline, and your essential, frameworks that you need to implement? If you could share that with our audience, please.
Sure. Interesting question. So this is more of the expectations mismatch is what I would say. Earlier, a traditional way of solving the problem is where you would give an input and it will give the output. It's more like a front-end receptionist who knows what to handle the limited scenarios. Now this GenAI is something you have huge amount of expectations. Say suppose you have hired an, like you said, the Harvard graduate only into your into your company as an internship to start the project. He may know a lot of things how to do, but the point is we were actually figuring out what to do also from him. We may take an assistance or inputs, but not what to do can never be told by GenAI agent, because why as a purpose would be known by us. It can make only things easy with how. And another important thing which is missing today in the organizations at most of the places is the data. Data is always in the silos. Now with that as a picture, in fact, I would say if corporate is the new temple or religion, data is the new deity which is giving a lot of boons. That's what I would say, and we should worship very carefully this data. The reason is, if the GenAI agent will work and do wonders when data is properly detailed and integrated. But with that data being scattered across and the data orchestration or the data engineering is not in place to the standards of GenAI, then we are missing the break. Now coming to the other things, like you said, be it APIs, I think we should not hit the GenAI agents to the core systems. Maybe we should using the good governance APIs to take input and output also maybe as a replica database at this point of time, because we don't know how it's going to change and work out. In the end, it's a model which we are building on it. I like a bit of technical being RAG and vector databases. RAG in a short form to put. Now, if the same Harvard graduate is given a knowledge library, he'll be more fine-tuned to tell the right pointer. So that's what RAG, and people should come eventually to use the vector databases, which is more of an the GenAI related cupboards, if I have to say, for the storage of data. And with all this being said, even the human in loop is needed. The reason is, with regulated entities like BFSI, in BFSI space especially, we would not be able to leave everything to the machine in the end. The human intervention of identifying explainability, observability has to be in place, and humans, the ROI or something would come when humans are not fixing it, but humans are improving it, which are relatively measurable. So I would say this, if the function or the GenAI agent works as a co-pilot or the co-workmate, especially, then it would work wonder. It can't be the commander or it can't be the executioner. That's what I feel.
All right. Thanks so much for that, Shiva. All right. Now, Shamindra, I'll come to you. You've heard from all of our IT leaders out here. Now, when you're talking about GenAI use cases, we see a lot of them. They launch the pilot, but then sometimes they fail to scale up. And some of the commonly cited reasons are data hallucinations or data integration challenges. So, how do you think companies would be able to overcome this? And also, as a consulting partner, what does IBM bring to the table? How can you ensure that organizations are able to get their deployments right the first time?
I think we have touched upon this in many of our pointers, but let me try to bring this together. But first, I need to set a little bit of context for us to understand what needs to be done, right? I'll bring three perspectives here. Obviously, there are others, but three very important perspectives which are important today for enterprises, right? The first perspective we have to all appreciate, we are on this real journey for only 2.5 years. And where did it all start? It started actually consumer side of things, because somebody decided to put a consumer wrapper on a technology that existed. So our introduction to GenAI was a very consumer experienced adoption. Now, what has happened with that is people have assumed in GenAI you can actually prompt and model and get Google-like answer, right? Unfortunately, that behavior has also translated into the enterprise side of things. That's point one. Point two is that with agentic AI being adopted, we need to be cognizant now that there are agents who are going to autonomously take decisions. So there are a lot of considerations that's coming into play. Who is accountable? How do you govern in this agent behavior, etc.? That's a very second important point, right? And the third, when I talk to some of the leaders now who were early in this journey, they are today sitting in a position, and you talked about the 3-layer architecture, very interesting. So you have the ERP layers. ERPs have their own agents today. You talk about SAP, you talk about Oracles with Joule and others. They have built those agents, which are actually very efficient. They should be embedded there. You have the front office toolkits like Salesforce, others. They have agents embedded. You have an entire data science team in your organization who is building agents, and suddenly this CDO and the CEO is grappling. I have this plethora of agents working in different ecosystems. How do I orchestrate this to make real business sense, right? So that's the backdrop. Now, in that backdrop, the way we look at, and I'll just crystallize 5 important things, right? The first important thing is around the origination, right? What we have realized is that in enterprise, nothing matters more than grounding on enterprise data, which LLMs inherently lack. And they have to operate on a fit for purpose, wherever the data is. I hear a lot of this debate around should it be on-prem, should it be cloud. That decision is purely driven by where your data is, and you operate your toolkits closer to where the data is. Certain use cases naturally tend to be orchestrated on cloud, others on-prem, right? So, first, the hyperbole or hype on model, in our very strong opinionated view, is going to fade away. What would remain is fit for purpose domain centric models, which will evolve but will be centered around the use cases. It will be multi-model, it will be in a hybrid architecture. That's point one. Point two, I don't want to belabor, I think our panelists have talked about it. I think GenAI or agentic by itself has not washed away the requirement of data plumbing. And pilot to and production, many of the 80% you talked about was about data plumbing. In any of this work that we do today, even today 60 to 70% of that entire effort is actually around data plumbing. So that is a fundamental truth that enterprises have to realize, right? The third point, which I talked about in terms of on what basis is the agents making decisions? Who is going to accountable? How do I ensure in automation decision making my risks are mitigated? And this is an entire space where governance has probably today in agentic world become far more important than even it was in the early days of GenAI or earlier AI, right? So in terms of transparency, in terms of grounding, in terms of understanding how this actually decision making is happening is a fundamental pillar. The fourth pillar, and I think both Rohit and Harsh talked about in some form, if you see the nature of work has shifted. So from being an execution, your employees are becoming orchestrators. Now, the moment this shift happens, the entire operating model needs to be addressed around it. How is that employee going to now work? Because if that person was supposed to just do some data entry or was just pushing some transaction in the ERP, today he is not doing that job. So that entire operating model change and the reskilling of that employee base becomes a fundamental pillar of how you are going to drive the ROI, right? And the last and final point, and I think all our panelists have touched upon it, and Rohit did allude to on workflow. The early days of GenAIs that we saw, which went into production, which were those assistant kind of things, were great as experiments, didn't deliver any ROI. What we are seeing in enterprise is ROIs is delivered when you are looking at the entire workflow, when you are trying to transform the entire goal of that work or the work segment that is being done. And it is being taken in an enterprise in a very programmatic way, like Harsh was alluding in terms of the entire initiative he has in Apollo, right? Just to allude actual numbers, because we are discussing in this panel on ROI. In 2023, our chairman Arvind Krishnan actually went to the street and said that we believe in these technologies, and I am putting a target of $2 billion US savings out of GenAI AI in our own operations, right? Come today, when he went back to the street in January, end of FY24, we have actually reported back to the street $3.5 billion of productivity gains. That's spanning across 5 functional areas within the organization. Some functions have dramatically changed because of the way we have implemented, HR being one notable one. Arvind Krishnan has globally talked about it, he's interviewed about it. Today, our entire HR service delivery is digital first. Out of the 11.4 million transactions yearly, 94% is handled in the digital layer, no human interactions. And when I discussed this with some of the CHRO, they asked me, what is the ratio of your HR partner to employee? I pause because I don't want to reply. That metric doesn't make any sense in our model today. As a matter of fact, our HR function today has more data scientists and data engineers than what used to be earlier traditional HR partners. So I think we have to take these 5 things in unison to really make sure that the use cases that we are delivering, and I do resonate with the point we have harped again and again in this discussion, it is a business problem we are solving. Not a single GenAI problem gets solved by just GenAI. There is always an AI, there is an automation, or there is something else that comes with it. And we take care of these 5 fundamental pillars to really address that question of productivity and innovation. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for that. And it was absolutely, exhilarating to talk to you guys. Great discussion. So, folks, that wraps up the third episode of our series, Data Differentiators. And thank you once again, Rohit, Shiva, Harsh, and of course, Shamindra. This is Soumik Ghosh signing off from ET Studios. Thanks, and we'll be back with you very soon.